August 17th, 1944. A German mechanic kneels beside an abandoned American truck on a French roadside wrench, trembling in his oil-stained hands. He has just opened the engine compartment. What he sees inside makes his breath catch, not because it's advanced, but because it's brilliantly simple. Every bolt the same size. Every part labeled. A manual with pictures, not equations. His commanding officer leans closer, face pale with understanding. "Mein Gott," he whispers. "If they can mass-produce genius like this, we've already lost." August 17th, 1944. 2:47 p.m. Route D7 of Ranches, Normandy. Obergefreiter Klaus Müller raised his fist. Universal signal halt. The 5-man maintenance team froze on the farm road. Behind them, 3 kilometers back, their division was burning everything they couldn't carry. Fuel dumps, ammunition, trucks with sledgehammers through their engine blocks. The Wehrmacht's 276th Infantry Division was retreating, and Klaus Müller had spent the morning destroying his own life's work vehicles he'd kept running through 3 years of war. There. Gefreiter Hermann Schultz pointed. An American truck sat at the crossroads, olive drab paint, canvas top shredded, engine ticking as it cooled. "Trap?" asked one of the young conscripts, Dieter, barely 19. "Maybe." Unteroffizier Otto Krebs unslung his rifle. "Americans wire everything. Müller, you're the mechanic. Check it." Klaus approached slowly. Each footstep felt wrong. The truck looked abandoned hastily recently. Coffee cup still on the dashboard. Cigarette butts fresh in the ashtray. He circled it once. Twice. Checked under the chassis, around the wheels, behind the cab. Nothing. "Clear," he called back. Schultz climbed into the driver's seat. Turned the key experimentally. The engine caught immediately. "Scheisse." Schultz's voice carried genuine shock. "It runs. Fuel gauge shows 3/4 full." Klaus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "They just left it?" "Looks that way." Krebs walked forward, rifle lowered, but ready. "Americans don't leave functional vehicles. What's wrong with it?" "Nothing I can see." Schultz revved the engine. Smooth, confident, healthy. "Transmission shifts clean. Brakes respond. This truck is fine." The 3 men looked at each other. "We walked 30 kilometers today," Krebs said quietly. "Our last truck died at kilometer 5. Nobody spoke. They understood. Germany was losing vehicles faster than factories could replace them. The Americans were abandoning perfectly good trucks because they had too many to bother recovering. Klaus moved to the rear cargo bed, standard supplies, rations, ammunition, medical kits. But wedged against the cab, wrapped in waterproof canvas, something else. A manual. Technical manual. TM 9803. He pulled it free. The weight surprised him, substantial, well-made, printed on paper that seemed impossibly thick for wartime. He flipped it open randomly. Exploded diagrams, numbered parts, simple line drawings. "Otto, Hermann, look at this." They crowded around him in the truck bed. Klaus turned pages. Each one felt like a small revelation. "These are cartoons," Schultz said, pointing to an illustration. A smiling American soldier, they'd labeled him Joe, demonstrating how to change a tire. Step by step, stick figures. "They drew cartoons in a technical manual." "Not cartoons," Klaus murmured. "Instructions for idiots." Or, Krebs took the manual, studied a page. "Instructions for an army of millions where most men have never touched an engine." Klaus felt his mouth go dry. Schultz was already flipping ahead. "Parts list. Look at the parts list." Pages and pages. Federal stock numbers. Standardized specifications. But Schultz's finger stopped on one section: cross-references. This oil filter, Schultz said, his factory training kicking in, also used in Dodge trucks. This bearing assembly compatible with 8 different models. Klaus, they've standardized everything. How many parts cross-reference with other vehicles? Klaus asked. Schultz scanned quickly. His face changed. Hundreds, maybe thousands. The implications hung there unspoken. Klaus jumped down from the truck bed, walked to the front. His hands were shaking and he didn't know why yet. He popped the hood. The GMC inline 6 sat there. Nothing spectacular. Cast iron block. Simple carburetor. But something felt wrong. Too accessible. Too logical. He grabbed his tool roll, selected his 19mm wrench. First bolt valve cover fastener. Perfect fit. Second bolt engine mount. Same size. Third bolt water pump housing. Same. No. He whispered it. Tried another bolt. And another. Water pump. Fuel pump. Carburetor mounting. All the same. Klaus Müller. Schultz's voice behind him. What's wrong? Klaus turned slowly, wrench still in hand. How many wrench sizes to completely disassemble an Opel Blitz engine? Schultz knew immediately. He'd worked at the Rüsselsheim plant for 6 years. 17 different sizes. 22 if you include the transmission and specialized tools. I've checked 30 bolts on this engine. Klaus held up the wrench. His hand trembled. 4 sizes, total, for everything I can reach. Schultz's face went pale. He pushed past Klaus, grabbed his own tools, started checking. Engine mounts, transmission housing, differential bolts. 4 sizes, Schultz confirmed. His voice sounded hollow. Dear God. 4. Krebs climbed down from the truck bed. Explain what that means. It means, Klaus said slowly, that any farmer with 4 wrenches can maintain this truck. It means they've eliminated precision, eliminated complexity, eliminated the need for trained mechanics. It means they've industrialized simplicity, Schultz added. At our factory, we built trucks for professional soldiers. They built this for everyone. Krebs stared at the engine. Keep looking. Find everything. They worked for 4 hours. The August sun tracked westward. Distant gunfire crackled rearguard actions kilometers away. The maintenance team dissected American engineering philosophy bolt by bolt. Klaus focused on accessibility. The carburetor 4 bolts completely exposed. I can remove this in 3 minutes. On our trucks, you have to remove 6 other components first. Fuel pump, Schultz called out. Mounted externally. No special tools required. And look, the air filter. Oil bath design. You can service this with any motor oil. Doesn't need replacement filters. Young Dieter found the electrical system. The wiring is color-coded, and every connection is labeled with brass tags. Battery positive. Starter solenoid. I can read these. That's the point, Klaus said quietly. You're supposed to read them. The youngest conscript Franz discovered smaller details. The fuel cap is chained to the filler. Can't lose it. The tire pressure specs are stamped on the door frame. The tool kit. He opened a yellow-painted box welded to the chassis. Exactly the tools you need. No more, no less. Each one painted bright yellow. So you can find them in mud, Schultz finished. Or in the dark. They regrouped at the rear of the truck. The sun was setting. The sounds of retreat had faded. For this moment they were alone with their discovery. Krebs spoke first. Gentlemen, every choice in this vehicle prioritizes one thing: keeping unskilled soldiers mobile under worst-case conditions. This truck doesn't need mechanics. It needs conscripts with a picture book. He paused. Let that settle. Now multiply this by 100,000, by 1 million. Imagine an entire army where every vehicle is this simple, this repairable, where any farm boy from Iowa can maintain it, where spare parts are interchangeable across models. Klaus opened his journal, started sketching the engine layout. We've been thinking about this wrong. We built vehicles for professional soldiers in a professional army. The Americans are building for an army that can grow to any size. They're not trying to out-engineer us, Schultz said. Understanding was dawning in his eyes. Terrible understanding. They're trying to outproduce us. This simplicity isn't a limitation. Krebs picked up the technical manual, hefted its weight. This is the weapon. Silence. Klaus looked at his sketches, at the diagrams in the manual, at the truck itself, still idling smoothly. There's something else, he said quietly. Something worse. Worse than this? Schultz asked. The manual. Look at Section 8 Emergency Field Repairs. Klaus flipped to the page. They're teaching battlefield expedients in the official documentation. How to use rope as a fan belt. How to improvise fuel line repairs. How to bypass damaged components. Our manuals would forbid that, Schultz said. Exactly. They're assuming their trucks will break. They're planning for failure. And they're teaching 18-year-old conscripts how to fix it anyway. Krebs sat down heavily on the truck's rear bumper. They've designed for imperfection. And they're going to win with it, Klaus finished. The light was failing. They needed to move. The front was collapsing. The division would be crossing into Belgium soon, then Germany. Running. Always running. But none of them moved. We have to take this truck, Müller said. Not as a prize, as evidence. Evidence of what? Dieter asked. Of why we're losing. They loaded their equipment, their tools, their personal gear. Schultz took the driver's seat. Klaus sat beside him, manual open on his lap, reading by flashlight as they pulled onto the road. Behind them, France burned. Ahead, Germany waited, but a different Germany than they'd left. The column of retreat stretched ahead in the darkness. Horses, wagons. A few precious remaining German trucks limping along on bad fuel and failing parts. And now this, an American GMC humming smoothly carrying German soldiers eastward. It's almost insulting, Schultz said, hands on the wheel. How well this runs. It's supposed to run well, Klaus replied. That's the entire philosophy. Build it simple. Build it reliable. Build it in quantities that make quality irrelevant. They drove in silence for several minutes. The road was rough, but the truck absorbed it effortlessly. The suspension, Klaus noted, was overbuilt for the load, another design choice that sacrificed efficiency for durability. I worked at Opel for 6 years, Schultz said suddenly. We were proud. Precision engineering. German craftsmanship. We could build trucks that would outlast anything the Americans made. Better performance. Better fuel efficiency. Better everything. But, Klaus prompted. But we could build 50 in the time they build 500. Schultz's voice was bitter. And ours needed trained mechanics, specialized parts, complex maintenance schedules. This... He slapped the dashboard. This just runs, and keeps running. And when it breaks, anyone can fix it. Krebs spoke from the back. You know what scares me most? What? We captured this one truck by accident. But somewhere right now, American factories are building more. Not dozens, not hundreds, maybe thousands per day. And they're all like this. All simple, all repairable, all standardized. Klaus thought about that, tried to imagine it. A factory in Detroit, maybe. Assembly lines stretching further than he could see. Workers, not craftsmen, just workers bolting together identical components. Trucks rolling off the line every few minutes. Everyone exactly the same. Everyone using the same 4 wrench sizes. He started writing in his journal. The truck's motion made his handwriting shake, but he needed to record this while it was fresh. What are you writing? Dieter asked. Klaus read aloud as he wrote, We have encountered the enemy's greatest weapon, and it is not a tank or aircraft. It is a design philosophy that assumes infinite scale. If they can manufacture excellence through simplicity in quantities that turn quality into quantity, then all our precision engineering becomes expensive obsolescence. He paused, added one more line. The war may already be decided not on battlefields, but in factories we cannot match. Schultz glanced over, read the words, said nothing. They crossed into Belgium just after midnight. The GMC's fuel gauge still showed half full, Behind them, they'd passed 3 abandoned German trucks out of fuel, out of parts, out of time. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. "You know what we'll do when we get back," Krebs said. "We'll file a report. Document everything. Send it up the chain of command." "Will anyone listen?" Franz asked. "No," Krebs said flatly. "They'll call it defeatist talk. Or they'll say we're exaggerating. Or they'll classify it and forget about it. So why bother? Because someday," Klaus said, still writing, "someone will want to know. They'll want to know why Germany lost. And when they ask, there will be evidence. Written testimony from men who saw the truth." They drove through the night. The GMC never faltered, never hesitated, just kept running with the mechanical indifference of something built to endure. At dawn, they reached the German border. There was no ceremony, no sense of homecoming. Just a checkpoint, a weary guard, and a wave to continue. Schultz pulled the truck to the side of the road, killed the engine. They sat there as the sun rose over Germany. "We're bringing an American truck home," Dieter said. "That's strange?" "It's not strange," Klaus replied. "It's prophetic. In a few months, thousands of these will roll across this border. But they won't be captured. They'll be conquering." Krebs climbed out, stretched, looked at the truck one last time. "Müller, finish your report. Schultz, check the vehicle over. We'll need to present it for inspection. Franz, Dieter, get some rest. We have a long day ahead." But Klaus didn't move. He sat in the passenger seat manual in his lap, staring at the simple diagrams and cheerful illustrations of Joe, the cartoon soldier. Somewhere in America right now, factories were running, shifts changing, workers clocking in, assembly lines rolling, and every few minutes another GMC truck rolled off the line. Simple, reliable, unstoppable. He closed the manual, closed his journal, closed his eyes. The mathematics were inescapable. Germany could build better, but America could build more. And in total war, more was the only equation that mattered. "Klaus, Schultz's voice broke his thoughts. "We should move. We should." "Yes." Klaus opened his eyes, looked at his friend. "Hermann, do you remember what you said when we found this truck?" "I said a lot of things." "You said it runs, like you were surprised." "I was surprised." "That's the problem," Klaus said quietly. "We were surprised that an enemy vehicle works properly. We've gotten so used to our own trucks failing that we're shocked when something just functions." Schultz had no answer for that. They drove on. The GMC carried them toward Berlin, toward headquarters, toward a report that no one would believe and everyone should have read. Behind them, the border. Ahead, the end. And in between, one American truck built for an army of millions, designed to run forever. The lesson was clear. The war was over. Some men just hadn't realized it yet. The GMC rolled through the gates of Wehrmacht High Command in Zossen at 11:23 a.m. September 2, 1944. Klaus had driven the last shift, unwilling to let anyone else present their evidence. The truck looked absurd among the staff cars and motorcycles, too big, too foreign, too American. "Park it there." The gate guard pointed to a maintenance yard. "Someone will inspect it." "We need to speak to the logistics directorate," Krebs said. "Immediately." The guard looked at 3 exhausted mechanics in oil-stained uniforms. "You need authorization for—" "We have a captured American vehicle with full documentation." Klaus pulled out the technical manual. "This needs to reach someone who understands production capacity." Something in his voice made the guard pause. Maybe desperation. Maybe conviction. "Wait here." They waited for 40 minutes. The GMC sat among German vehicles, like a teacher in a classroom of failing students. A Kubelwagen with a cracked engine block, an Opel Blitz missing half its spark plugs, a motorcycle that hadn't run in weeks. "Look at them," Schultz muttered. "Our own motor pool is dying." Klaus didn't answer. He was watching staff officers cross the compound. Clean uniforms, polished boots, men who lived in a world of paperwork and projections far from the reality of roads littered with abandoned German trucks. Finally, a Hauptmann approached. Captain Friedrich Weber, according to his nameplate. Young. Maybe 30. His uniform suggested staff assignment, never seen combat, never seen retreat. You requisitioned a priority meeting. Weber's tone was already dismissive. We captured an American truck, Krebs said. We need to... Yes, I can see the truck. Congratulations. Fill out Form 718B for captured equipment and... Captain. Klaus stepped forward, held out the technical manual. You need to read this, not file it. Read it. Weber took the manual like it might be contaminated, flipped through a few pages. It's an American maintenance guide, so it's evidence of American production philosophy, Klaus said. His voice was rising, and he didn't care. Evidence that explains why we're losing the logistics war. We're not losing. I've been at the front for 3 years, Krebs interrupted. His voice was cold, flat, the voice of a man who'd seen too much. We're losing, and this truck explains why. Weber's face flushed. I should have you arrested for defeatist talk. Then arrest us after you read the report. Klaus pulled out his journal. 40 pages of notes, diagrams, calculations. Give us 30 minutes. If we're wrong, charge us. If we're right, forward this up the chain. Weber looked at the 3 men, at the American truck, at the journal. 15 minutes, he said. My office. They followed him into a building that smelled of paper and floor wax. Weber's office was small, but organized maps on the walls, production reports stacked neatly, a photo of the Führer in a cheap frame. Klaus laid out his evidence on the desk. The manual, his journal, technical sketches, parts lists. The Americans have standardized their entire logistics chain, he began. This truck uses the same components as 8 other vehicle models. Every bolt is one of 4 sizes. The manual is written for conscripts with no mechanical training. That's not impressive, Weber said. That's crude. It's scalable. Schultz leaned forward. I worked at Opel. We built precision vehicles that needed trained mechanics and specialized parts. Beautiful engineering. But we could build maybe 200 per month. The Americans are building thousands per week. Impossible. Is it? Klaus opened the manual to the parts cross-reference section. They've eliminated complexity, eliminated precision where it's not needed. Every choice prioritizes production speed and field repair. This isn't crude engineering, Captain. This is industrial philosophy. Weber studied the pages. His expression shifted from dismissal to interest to something darker. You're saying they've sacrificed quality for quantity. We're saying, Krebs replied, they've redefined what quality means in total war. A truck that's 80% as good, but produced in 500% greater numbers wins, every time. Klaus pointed to his calculations. Our Opel Blitz is more fuel efficient, better performance, superior handling, and it needs 17 wrench sizes, 12 specialized tools, and a trained mechanic for maintenance. Their GMC needs 4 wrenches and a picture book. Which one keeps an army mobile? Weber sat down slowly, read through Klaus's notes, page after page of observations that painted a picture of German defeat written in bolt sizes and production numbers. This is thorough, he admitted. We spent 4 days analyzing that truck, Klaus said, and 3 weeks driving it back here. It never failed, not once. We ran it low on oil. We skipped maintenance intervals. We pushed it on roads that destroyed our own vehicles. It just kept running. The engine, Schultz added, is intentionally overbuilt. Thicker castings, larger bearings, more metal than needed. It's inefficient and heavy, but it survives abuse that would kill our motors. They're building for the lowest common denominator, Weber said. They're building for an army of millions, Klaus corrected. An army that conscripts factory workers and farmers and teaches them basic maintenance in 2 weeks. We're building for a professional army that doesn't exist anymore. Silence filled the office. Outside, a truck engine coughed and died. Someone cursed. The sounds of a military machine running on empty. Weber closed the journal. I'll forward this to the logistics directorate. But you should know they won't want to hear it. Why not? Because it implies we've already lost. That our entire industrial approach is obsolete. That Germany's engineering excellence is actually a strategic weakness. Weber's voice was bitter. Nobody wants to tell the high command that precision is killing us. Then what do we do? Dieter asked. He'd been silent until now. Weber looked at the young conscript. You go back to the front. You keep those vehicles running as long as possible. And you hope someone somewhere is listening. They left his office in silence. The report would travel up the chain, Klaus knew. It would be read, filed, forgotten. Or worse, suppressed as defeatist propaganda. They collected the GMC from the motor pool. An inspection team had already begun dismantling it for analysis. Good. Maybe they'd learn something. Where now? Schultz asked as they walked toward the barracks. Back to our unit, Krebs said. The 276th is being reformed near Aachen. They'll need mechanics. To fix what? Klaus asked quietly. We have no spare parts, no fuel, no time. Then we improvise, like the Americans taught us. They were given 3 days rest, then new orders. The 276th Infantry Division was being rebuilt from survivors and fresh conscripts. Their vehicle pool, 2 Opel Blitz trucks with bad clutches, 1 Kübelwagen missing second gear, and 3 captured American vehicles, 2 GMCs, and a Dodge WC-52. Klaus laughed when he saw the inventory. Couldn't help it. Something funny? Asked the new motor pool officer, Lieutenant Strauss. We're fighting with captured American trucks because ours don't work. Strauss didn't find it amusing. Make them all work. We move out in 48 hours. They worked around the clock. The Opel trucks needed parts they didn't have, so they cannibalized one to keep the other running. The Kübelwagen required a transmission rebuild with improvised tools. But the American vehicles, Klaus checked their oil topped off fuel, and they started immediately. It's humiliating, Schultz said, lying under a German truck at 2 a.m., trying to fabricate a replacement clutch spring from wire. Their vehicles are simpler than ours, and they work better. Not better, Klaus replied. Just more appropriate for this war. What's the difference? Better implies objective superiority. Appropriate means right for the conditions. In 1939, our trucks were better. In 1944, theirs are more appropriate. Schultz emerged from under the Opel grease covering his face. Philosophy won't start this engine. No, but understanding philosophy might help us survive the next 6 months. They got 3 vehicles operational by deadline. The 2 Opel trucks limped. The American vehicles purred. On October 15, 1944, the reformed 276th Division moved toward the Western Front. Klaus drove a GMC loaded with supplies. Schultz followed in the Dodge. Behind them, the German trucks struggled, smoking and coughing like dying horses. They made it 30 kilometers before the first Opel broke down. Cracked engine block, unrepairable. Leave it, Krebs ordered. Transfer the cargo to the American trucks. They did. The GMC took the extra weight without complaint. At 50 kilometers, the second Opel died. Fuel pump failure. No replacement parts. Leave it. Now their entire supply column ran on captured American vehicles. The irony was too painful for words. They reached Aachen on October 18th. The city was rubble. American artillery had been pounding it for weeks. The Wehrmacht was defending street by street, building by building, but everyone knew it was hopeless. Klaus found a half-destroyed garage and set up a makeshift motor pool. His job: keep 6 vehicles running with no parts, no tools, and no hope. The American trucks became his lifeline. When German vehicles failed, he scavenged American ones. Spark plugs, fuel filters, oil pumps, everything interchangeable, everything accessible. You've become an American mechanic, Schultz joked one evening as Klaus rebuilt a carburetor using parts from 3 different GMC trucks. I've become a survivor, Klaus corrected. The battle for Aachen consumed 3 weeks. The motor pool became a strange oasis. Men from different units gathering around the American trucks, learning to maintain them depending on them. A Panzer Grenadier sergeant named Koch approached Klaus one morning. "Can you teach my drivers basic maintenance on those?" He pointed to the GMCs. "Why?" "Because they're the only vehicles that work. And if my men can keep them running, maybe we survive this." Klaus taught him, showed him the 4 wrench sizes, the simple procedures, the picture book manual. Within a week, Koch's drivers could perform basic repairs without Klaus's help. "The Americans built these trucks for idiots," Koch said, not unkindly. "Lucky for us because we're all idiots now." More men came. Tank crews whose panzers had no fuel, infantry whose trucks had died, artillery whose prime movers were scrap. They all gathered around the American vehicles, learning the philosophy of simplicity. "It's like a school," Dieter observed. "A school teaching German soldiers how to be American mechanics." "It's an autopsy," Klaus replied. "We're learning from the corpse of our own defeat." On November 3rd, an SS officer arrived. Sturmbannführer Heller, tall and cold and certain. "I hear you're running American vehicles exclusively," Heller said. "We're running whatever works," Krebs replied carefully. "It's unacceptable. German soldiers should drive German vehicles." "Then send us German vehicles that function," Klaus said. He was too tired for politics. "Send us parts, fuel, mechanics. Until then, we drive what moves." Heller's hand moved toward his pistol. "You're dangerously close to defeatism." "I'm dangerously close to keeping this unit mobile," Klaus shot back. "Which would you prefer, pride or survival?" They stared at each other. Around them, the motor pool had gone silent. Men watching, waiting. Finally, Heller smiled. No warmth in it. "Keep your American trucks mechanic. When we win, we'll build proper German ones again." He left. Klaus realized his hands were shaking. "You shouldn't have done that," Schultz said quietly. "Probably not. He could have shot you." "Yes. Was it worth it?" Klaus looked at the GMC truck running smoothly despite 3 months of abuse. "Yes." The battle for Aachen ended on November 22nd. The Americans took the city. The 276th Division withdrew again further east, always east, toward Germany's shrinking borders. They moved at night now. American aircraft owned the daylight. Klaus drove with headlights off, following the dim taillights of the truck ahead, praying they wouldn't hit a crater. "How much fuel?" Krebs asked from the passenger seat. "Half tank, maybe 300 kilometers. And then we walk." But the GMC kept running, through rain and mud and roads cratered by bombs. It kept running when German vehicles died. It kept running when hope died. On December 10th, they received new orders. The unit was being moved to the Ardennes sector. Something big was planned. A counter-offensive. One last throw of the dice. "They're insane," Schultz said, reading the orders. "We have no fuel, no air cover, no logistics. How can we attack? Because we still have these." Klaus patted the GMC's hood. "Captured American trucks to fuel a German offensive. The irony is perfect." They moved into position on December 15th. The Ardennes forest was frozen and dark. Thousands of German troops massing in secret. Tanks, artillery, and supply trucks, many of them captured American vehicles, pressed into service because German industry couldn't keep up. Klaus spent the night before the offensive checking every vehicle in his motor pool. 3 GMCs, 2 Dodges, 1 barely functioning Opel. This was the mighty Wehrmacht, running on borrowed American machinery. "Are they ready?" Krebs asked. "The American ones, yes. The German one will die within 50 kilometers. Then we'll abandon it and consolidate cargo, like we always do." At 5:30 a.m. on December 16th, the artillery began. The Battle of the Bulge had started. And Klaus Müller, German mechanic, drove an American truck toward what he knew would be Germany's last gasp. The GMC's engine rumbled steadily. Reliable, simple, unstoppable, just like the army that built it. The offensive lasted 4 days before Klaus realized they were already dead. Not literally, not yet, but strategically, inevitably. The mathematics were unavoidable. December 20th, 1944, 3:17 a.m., somewhere east of Bastogne. Klaus stood beside the GMC fuel can in hand, doing calculations by flashlight. The can was empty, so were the next 3. Their entire fuel allocation for the week had evaporated in 72 hours of combat operations. "How much left?" Krebs asked. "In our vehicles, maybe 60 liters total, enough for 30 kilometers if we're lucky." The offensive stalled everywhere, not from enemy resistance from empty tanks. Schultz emerged from under a Dodge, his face grim. The Opel finally died, crankshaft seized, and the other Dodge just threw a rod. "We're down to 3 running vehicles. All American," Klaus noted. "All running on fumes." They stood in the frozen darkness, breath-misting, listening to distant artillery. The Battle of the Bulge. Germany's last great offensive was dying, not with explosions, but with silence. The silence of engines that wouldn't start, of tanks abandoned mid-advance, of an army that had gambled everything on captured fuel depots they never reached. "The irony," Schultz said quietly, "is that we're using American trucks to attack Americans, and we're losing because we can't capture enough American fuel to keep the American trucks running." Klaus laughed. Couldn't help it. The sound came out harsh and bitter. "Something funny." A new voice. Lieutenant Strauss approached from the darkness. "Just appreciating the situation, sir." "Well, appreciate this. We have orders to relocate the supply dump to Hoffelise, 60 kilometers northwest. You have 3 trucks and no fuel." "That's impossible." "Then find a way to make it possible. We move at dawn." Strauss left. Klaus looked at Krebs, at Schultz, at young Dieter, who'd been listening silently. "Ideas?" Krebs asked. "Siphon fuel from every abandoned vehicle we can find," Klaus said. "German-American doesn't matter. 5 liters here, 10 there. Might get us enough for 1 truck. 1 truck for a division's supplies. 1 truck is better than none." They worked through the night. Moved vehicle to vehicle, across the frozen battlefield, siphoning fuel from wrecks and abandoned equipment. A Panther tank with a broken transmission, 30 liters. A burning half-track, 15 liters, from the auxiliary tank. An American Jeep driver dead at the wheel, 20 liters. By dawn, they'd collected enough fuel for maybe 40 kilometers. Not 60. Not enough. "Load the most critical supplies," Krebs ordered. "Ammunition, medical supplies, food if there's room. Leave everything else." They loaded 1 GMC. Klaus drove. Schultz navigated. The truck groaned under the weight, but started without complaint. "What about the other vehicles?" Dieter asked. "Leave them. Someone else can salvage them if they find fuel." They rolled out at 6:45 a.m. Behind them, 2 perfectly functional American trucks sat silent for lack of gasoline. Ahead, a road crowded with retreating German units, all moving slowly, conserving fuel, accepting defeat, 1 kilometer at a time. Klaus kept the GMC at 40 kilometers per hour. Any faster wasted fuel. Any slower, and they'd never make it. "Checkpoint ahead," Schultz said. Military police had set up a roadblock. An Oberleutnant flagged them down. "Fuel status. Critical," Klaus replied. "Barely enough to reach Hoffelise." "You'll have to share. Orders from division. All vehicles must provide fuel to priority units." "We have maybe 30 liters left. Take that and we don't move at all." The Oberleutnant smiled without warmth. "Then you walk. Priority goes to combat units. Give me 15 liters. Klaus looked at Krebs. Krebs nodded slowly. They siphoned 15 liters into waiting cans, watched them disappear into a Kubelwagen carrying staff officers. Officers who would use that fuel to drive to safety while supply trucks died on the roadside. Military efficiency, Schultz muttered as they drove away. They made it 28 kilometers before the engine coughed. No, Klaus whispered, pumped the accelerator. The GMC surged briefly, then coughed again. He pulled to the roadside as the engine died. Silence. Check the tank, Krebs said. Klaus already knew. He unscrewed the gas cap, looked inside with a flashlight. Empty, completely dry. We're 32 kilometers from Hufvudstaden, Schultz said, checking the map. Might as well be on the moon. They sat there as other vehicles passed. Some stopped to ask if they had spare fuel. Klaus laughed at that. Spare fuel. As if such a thing existed. We wait, Krebs decided. Maybe a fuel truck comes through. And if it doesn't, then we unload what we can carry and walk. Hours passed. The traffic thinned. By afternoon, they were alone on the road. No fuel trucks came. No miracles arrived. We should move, Krebs said finally. Grab what we can carry. Medical supplies first, then ammunition, then food. They began unloading. Each man could carry maybe 20 kilos. The truck held 2 tons of supplies. The mathematics of abandonment. Wait. Dieter was looking back down the road. Vehicle approaching. An American Jeep. Moving fast. Klaus's hand went to his rifle, but the Jeep was already stopping. 2 GIs, both young, both armed. You guys broken down, the driver called in English. Klaus understood enough. Out of fuel. Huh. The American looked at the GMC. That's one of ours. Where'd you get it? Captured it. Avranches. August. The American whistled. Long way from Avranches. Thing still running. Was, until we ran dry. The Americans conferred quietly. Then the driver pulled out a fuel can from the Jeep. 5 gallons, maybe 20 liters. Here, on the house. Klaus stared. Why? Because that GMC's a good truck. Shame to see it die for lack of gas. The American grinned. Besides, you're heading east, away from the fight. Figure you earned it. They poured the fuel into the tank. The Americans watched. You know you're losing, right? The driver said. Not unkindly, just stating fact. Yes, Klaus replied. We know. Then why keep fighting? Klaus thought about that. About orders and duty and the machinery of war that ground on even when the outcome was decided. Because stopping would mean admitting we were wrong about everything. The American nodded slowly. Yeah, I get that. He climbed back into the Jeep. Good luck, Fritz. You're gonna need it. They drove away. Klaus and his team stood there holding 20 liters of enemy gasoline given freely by men they were supposed to kill. Did that just happen? Schultz asked. Get in the truck, Krebs said quietly. Before I start questioning everything I thought I knew about this war. The fuel got them to Hufvudstaden. Barely. They rolled into the depot on fumes and prayers. The depot was chaos. Supplies stacked everywhere. Wounded men lying in rows. Vehicles being cannibalized for parts. The offensive had broken against American defenses and winter weather. Now came the retreat. Klaus reported to the supply officer, a haggard major named Stein. You're late, Stein said. We ran out of fuel. Twice. Join the club. Unload your cargo at Warehouse 3. Then report to the motor pool. They're consolidating all functional vehicles. Where are we going? East. Always east. Back to Germany. The motor pool was a graveyard. Dozens of vehicles, most immobile. Klaus counted maybe 20 that looked operational. Half were American. A Feldwebel named Becker ran the operation. Hard eyes, practical manner. A man who'd stopped believing in miracles. You're mechanics, Becker asked. Yes. Good. I need you to pick 5 vehicles from this lot that can make it 200 kilometers on minimal fuel. Everything else gets stripped for parts. Klaus walked through the vehicles with Schultz. Made notes. The German trucks were mostly dead-seized engines, broken transmissions, electrical failures. The American ones sat waiting ready to run if given fuel. These 5, Klaus said, pointing to 3 GMCs and 2 Dodges. All American, all maintained properly. They'll make it if we can find fuel. And the German ones? Scrap. Maybe salvage parts, but none are roadworthy. Becker studied his list. Division Command won't like that. They want us using German equipment. Division Command isn't here, Klaus said flatly. I am. And I'm telling you, these are the only vehicles that will move. They stared at each other. Fine, Becker said. Strip the German ones. Consolidate fuel from everything. We leave at 400 tomorrow. They worked through the night again. Klaus was so tired he could barely think, but his hands knew what to do. Drain fuel tanks, remove batteries, strip spare tires. The systematic dismemberment of Germany's mobile warfare. Schultz found him at midnight sitting on a running board eating cold rations. Koch is here, Schultz said. From Aachen. Remember him? Klaus did. The Panzer Grenadier Sergeant who'd learned American maintenance procedures. Koch approached, saluted casually. Heard you made it through the offensive? Barely. My company's down to 40 men, no vehicles. We're marching back to Germany. Koch sat down heavily. Wanted to thank you, though. For what? Teaching us how to keep those American trucks running. My men spent 3 months mobile because of it, 3 months alive because of it. Klaus looked at him. We lost anyway. Yeah, but we lost slower. That counts for something. Did it? Klaus wasn't sure anymore. But he nodded anyway. Koch pulled out a flask, offered it. Klaus drank. Schnapps. Probably looted. Question, Koch said. When did you know we'd lost? August 17th. Klaus replied without hesitation. The day we found that first GMC. The day I realized they could build 1 million trucks, and we couldn't build enough wrenches to maintain ours. That specific? That specific. They sat in silence. Around them, the sounds of an army dying engines being gutted orders shouted wounded men crying. What happens now? Koch asked. We retreat, we consolidate, we defend Germany itself, and eventually we lose there too. How long? Months, maybe a year if we're unlucky. Klaus took another drink. The Americans will win, not because they're better soldiers, because they have better logistics, better production, better philosophy. Better trucks, Koch added. Better everything. Koch stood. Well, if we're going to lose anyway, might as well lose with dignity. He saluted properly this time. Thank you, mechanic, for teaching an old soldier new tricks. He left. Klaus sat there, flask in hand, surrounded by the corpses of German vehicles. Schultz emerged from under a Dodge. Got another 30 liters, that's everything. Enough. For maybe 150 kilometers, not 200. Then we'll figure out the last 50 when we get there. At 0400 they rolled out. 5 American trucks carrying German soldiers and German supplies eastward through the snow. The convoy moved slowly, preserving fuel, accepting that speed was a luxury they could no longer afford. Klaus drove the lead truck. Behind him, the others followed. To his left, columns of infantry marched, no vehicles at all, just men on foot, retreating from the disaster in the Ardennes. We're being passed by walking soldiers, Schultz observed. That's how slow we're going. Fuel conservation? No, defeat conservation. We're stretching out the inevitable. They crossed into Germany on December 27, 1944. No ceremony, no celebration, just a sign and a checkpoint and continued retreat. The fuel lasted 143 kilometers. Not enough. They coasted to a stop 12 kilometers from the depot at Prüm. Out, Krebs asked. Completely. They sat there. 5 trucks, 60 men, 12 kilometers from safety, and no way to move. "We walk," Krebs decided. "Take critical supplies, leave the rest." "The trucks?" Dieter asked. "Abandoned? Again." Klaus climbed out, patted the GMC's hood. "Sorry, old friend. You deserved better." They loaded what they could carry and started walking. Behind them, 5 perfectly functional American trucks sat silent in the snow. 2 hours later, they heard engines, turned to see an American Sherman tank rolling down the road, followed by half-racks and jeeps. The Allied advance continuing relentless. "Should we hide?" Dieter whispered. "Where?" Krebs asked. "Open fields, no cover, nowhere to run." The American column stopped. A lieutenant climbed out of a jeep. "You guys armed?" he called in broken German. Klaus looked at their rifles, at the 60 exhausted men, at the American tanks. "Not usefully," he replied in English. The lieutenant laughed. "Smart answer. You're prisoners now. Drop the weapons." They did. The Americans searched them quickly, efficiently, then loaded them into trucks. American trucks, GMCs and Dodges running smoothly despite the cold. As they drove toward a POW collection point, Klaus looked back one last time. Their abandoned trucks sat there in the snow. 5 American vehicles that had carried German soldiers through the dying days of a losing war. "Funny thing," said the American guard sitting across from him. "Those are our trucks you were using." "We captured them," Klaus said. "And used them better than we do, probably. Heard stories about you guys keeping equipment running on nothing but willpower and spit." The guard offered a cigarette. Klaus took it. "War's almost over, you know." "I know." "What'll you do after—" Klaus thought about that. About 3 years of war. About a GMC truck found in France and a lesson learned too late. "Go home," he said finally. "Maybe build something instead of destroying it." "Build what?" Klaus smiled, took a drag on the cigarette. "Better trucks." The POW camp at Remagen sat on the west bank of the Rhine, close enough that Klaus could see the twisted remains of the Ludendorff Bridge, the bridge that had doomed Germany's western defenses when it fell intact into American hands on March 7, 1945. "Ironic, isn't it?" Schultz said, standing beside him at the fence. They'd been here 11 weeks now, 11 weeks of waiting for a war everyone knew was ending. "We spent years retreating across Europe, and now we're stuck watching the Rhine from the wrong side." Klaus didn't answer. He was watching the American motor pool across the compound. Rows of trucks being serviced, repaired, maintained. The familiar sound of engines starting, running, stopping. The rhythm of logistics that never ceased. "Müller!" An American sergeant approached the fence. Thompson. Heavy Brooklyn accent. He'd been managing the motor pool detail for the past month. "You and your guys, motor pool, now." They'd been assigned to vehicle maintenance 3 weeks after capture. The Americans had discovered they were mechanics, tested their skills, and put them to work. Klaus suspected it violated some Geneva Convention article, but nobody complained. Working was better than sitting. The motor pool had 43 vehicles. Klaus had counted. 31 GMCs, 8 Dodges, 4 Jeeps, all running, all maintained, all ready. "Got a new one," Thompson said, pointing to a GMC with a smoking engine. "Through a rod. I need it operational by tomorrow." Klaus looked at the truck, looked at Thompson. "That needs a complete engine rebuild. Minimum 3 days, probably 5. "I have a replacement engine, fully assembled. You just swap it." "Just swap it?" "Yeah. 4 mounting bolts, couple fuel lines, electrical connections. 2 hours tops." Klaus stared. "You're joking." "Do I look like I'm joking? We don't rebuild engines in the field. We replace them. That's what logistics means." Thompson walked away. Klaus stood there processing. Schultz joined him. Did he just say they replace entire engines instead of rebuilding them? He did. That's insane. Do you know how expensive? It's not insane, Klaus interrupted. It's logical. If you have unlimited production capacity, replacement is faster than repair. Time matters more than cost. They spent the next 2 hours removing the damaged engine. It was exactly as Thompson described: 4 mounting bolts, standardized connections, everything designed for rapid replacement. The engine lifted out cleanly. The replacement came on a pallet wrapped in protective oil paper with an instruction card attached. GMC 270 Inline 6, Installation Procedure 1-8. Step-by-step instructions with illustrations. It's like building furniture, Schultz muttered, reading the card. Insert bolt A into hole B, torque to specification. Connect hose C. It's like being at war with people who turned war into a factory process, Klaus replied. They had the new engine installed in 90 minutes, started it, ran perfectly. Thompson returned, checked their work, nodded. Good, see easy. Where did the replacement engine come from? Klaus asked. Supply depot in Belgium. They have hundreds, maybe thousands. We order them like groceries. And the old engine? Shipped back to a rebuild facility. They'll fix it, test it, put it back in inventory. Nothing gets wasted. Klaus looked at the truck, now fully operational again. How many spare engines do you have total, for all vehicles? Thompson shrugged. No idea. Thousands, tens of thousands. We don't run out. That's the point. That night, lying on his bunk in the POW barracks, Klaus couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about spare engines stacked in warehouses, about a logistics system so deep, so robust, that field units never worried about parts availability. You're thinking too much, Krebs said from the next bunk. I can hear you thinking. They have thousands of spare engines, Klaus said, just sitting in warehouses, ready to ship anywhere. So Germany lost this war in 1940. We just didn't know it yet. The Americans were already building the logistics infrastructure that would bury us. While we were winning tactical victories, they were creating strategic inevitability. That's a depressing thought. It's a true thought. On April 12, 1945, word spread through the camp that Roosevelt had died. The Americans seemed genuinely shaken. Production President Harry Truman would take over. The war would continue exactly as before. Leaders change, Schultz observed. The machine keeps running. 3 weeks later, Hitler died in Berlin. The Americans told them casually, like mentioning the weather. Some prisoners wept. Some celebrated. Most felt nothing but exhaustion. Germany surrendered unconditionally on May 8, 1945. The war in Europe was over. Klaus felt relieved. Then empty. Then uncertain. What now? The camp's status changed overnight. They were no longer prisoners of war. Now they were disarmed enemy forces, a legal distinction that meant almost nothing practically, but everything procedurally. They're going to process us, Thompson explained. Background checks, denazification interviews, then repatriation to Germany. When? Weeks, months, depends on your records. Klaus waited. They all waited. The motor pool work continued. The Americans still needed mechanics, victory or not. The truck still needed maintenance. In June, a new officer arrived. Captain Jenkins, West Point educated, engineering background. He spent a week observing the motor pool before calling Klaus into his office. Sit, Jenkins said. Not unkindly. Klaus sat. Thompson tells me you're the best mechanic he's ever seen. German training. 15 years. Automotive engineer before the war. Stuttgart Technical Institute. And during the war, 276th Infantry Division. Maintenance Company. Jenkins opened a file. Klaus's file, apparently. You were captured driving American vehicles. We were. Our German trucks had failed. The American ones kept running. Thompson also tells me you wrote a report. August 1944. Analysis of American vehicle design philosophy. Wehrmacht High Command classified it and ignored it. Klaus felt ice in his stomach. How do you know about that? We captured the archives in Zossen. Your report was in the Logistics Directorate files. I read it. Jenkins leaned forward. It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You understood American industrial strategy better than most American officers. It was too late to matter. Maybe for Germany, not for you. Jenkins pulled out another document. I'm authorized to offer certain skilled prisoners employment. Reconstruction work. Germany needs to be rebuilt. That requires vehicles, logistics, infrastructure, people who understand both German precision and American scale. You want me to work for the Americans? I want you to work for Germany's future. We're helping rebuild it. You can be part of that. Or you can go home to Stuttgart and try to find work in a city that's 65% destroyed. Klaus thought about Stuttgart, about his parents' house probably rubble, about the Opel factory certainly bombed, about a Germany that had lost everything. What would I do? Teach. We're establishing motor pools in occupied Germany, training German civilians in vehicle maintenance. The Marshall Plan will bring trucks, equipment, machinery. Someone needs to teach Germans how to maintain it. Jenkins paused. Someone who understands both systems, German engineering and American logistics. I need to think about it. You have a week. Klaus discussed it with Krebs and Schultz that evening. They sat in the barracks smoking American cigarettes, talking quietly. It's practical, Krebs said. Germany will need mechanics. Might as well learn from the people who won. It feels like betrayal, Klaus replied. Of what? A government that ignored our warnings, a military that sent us to die in American trucks because ours didn't work. Schultz shook his head. We don't owe the Third Reich anything, Klaus. We owe ourselves survival. And maybe, Krebs added, we owe Germany the truth. The truth that precision without scale is obsolete, that we need to learn from defeat. Klaus thought about the GMC truck found in France, about 3 years of watching American logistics crush German excellence through sheer abundance, about lessons learned in oil and steel. I'll do it, he said. He told Jenkins the next morning. The captain smiled. Good. You'll start at Mannheim, motor pool training facility. U.S. Army Transportation Corps is setting it up. You'll work with American instructors teaching German civilians and former Wehrmacht personnel. What do I teach them? Everything you learned: standardization, simplification, scale, maintenance procedures, the philosophy of keeping things moving instead of making things perfect. Klaus started work 3 weeks later, July 15, 1945. Mannheim was a wasteland, block after block of bombed buildings. But the motor pool facility was new, built by American engineers in 6 weeks. Classroom spaces, workshop bays, rows of vehicles for training, American vehicles of course, GMCs, Dodges, Jeeps. His first class had 20 students, German men aged 18 to 50, some former soldiers, some factory workers, some farmers who'd never touched an engine. Klaus stood before them, holding a wrench and a technical manual. My name is Klaus Müller, he began. I was a Wehrmacht mechanic. I spent 3 years maintaining German vehicles and captured American ones. I'm going to teach you why the Americans won, and it has nothing to do with bravery or tactics. He held up the wrench. 4 sizes. That's all you need to maintain most American vehicles. 4. The Germans needed 17. He held up the manual. Pictures, step-by-step instructions, written for soldiers with 2 weeks training. German manuals assumed expertise. He walked to a GMC truck, opened the hood. This engine is simple, accessible, overbuilt. It sacrifices efficiency for durability. It prioritizes repair speed over performance. And because of these choices, America built 1 million of them while Germany struggled to build 50,000 better ones. The students listened, some angry, some fascinated, all paying attention. You're going to learn American methods, Klaus continued. Not because they're better in every way, but because they work at scale. And Germany needs scale now. We need to rebuild. We need logistics. We need to understand that sometimes good enough produced abundantly beats excellent produced rarely. Over the following months, Klaus taught hundreds of students. Former enemies learning from enemies. The irony never faded. Schultz joined the program in August, Krebs in September. Other former Wehrmacht mechanics followed. They became instructors teaching the lessons learned in retreat. "It's strange," Schultz said one evening as they cleaned tools. "Teaching Germans to think like Americans." "We're teaching Germans to survive," Klaus corrected. The world changed. We adapt or become obsolete. In November, Klaus received a letter from Captain Weber, the staff officer who'd read his original report in 1944. The letter was brief. "You were right. I was wrong. I spent 3 months in a Russian POW camp learning what you tried to tell me. Precision loses to abundance. Excellence loses to scale. I'm sorry we didn't listen. Weber." Klaus filed the letter carefully. Validation years too late. By spring 1946, the Mannheim facility had trained over 2,000 Germans. Many went on to work in reconstruction. Some joined emerging German companies. A few went to America itself, recruited by Detroit automakers who valued their expertise. In May, Jenkins called Klaus into his office. "We're expanding the program, opening facilities in Frankfurt, Munich, Hamburg. I want you to help design the curriculum, standardize the training across all locations." "Standardize," Klaus repeated, smiled slightly. "The American way. The effective way. You taught us that simplicity and standardization win. Now teach Germany." Klaus accepted. Spent the summer developing training materials. Technical manuals written in German but following American clarity. Illustrated guides. Step-by-step procedures. Everything designed for rapid learning and practical application. Somewhere in those months, he stopped feeling like a defeated soldier and started feeling like an educator. The war was over. The lessons remained. In August 1946, Klaus returned to Stuttgart for the first time since the war. The city was skeletal. His parents' house was intact but damaged. His father, too old for military service, had survived. His mother welcomed him with tears. "You're home," she said. "For a few days, then back to Mannheim. I have work." "What kind of work?" "Teaching, vehicle maintenance, helping rebuild." His father, a former engineer himself, asked questions. Klaus explained, showed him the technical manuals he'd developed, described the training program. "You're teaching German precision through American simplicity," his father said. "I'm teaching survival through adaptation." Before he left Stuttgart, Klaus visited the Opel factory ruins, or what remained. Allied bombing had been thorough. The assembly halls were rubble. The office buildings were shells, but among the ruins, crews were already working, American engineers and German workers. Clearing debris, planning reconstruction. A sign announced, "Opel Reconstruction Program, Marshall Plan funded." Klaus watched them work, watched American tractors move rubble, watched German workers learn to operate them, watched defeat transform into rebuilding. An American supervisor approached. "You an engineer? We're hiring." "I'm a teacher now, but I trained at the Technical Institute, worked here before the war." "Then you know what this place was?" "I know what it will be again." The supervisor nodded. "Different though. We're bringing American production methods, assembly line efficiency, standardized processes. Your old precision craftsmanship won't be enough anymore." "I know," Klaus said. "I learned that lesson years ago." He returned to Mannheim in September. The training program continued. Students came and went, skills transferred, knowledge spread. In December 1946, Schultz showed Klaus a newspaper article. "Look at this. German automakers adopt American production methods." They're interviewing former Mercedes engineers. One of them mentions your training program specifically. Klaus read the article. It quoted an engineer named Hoffman. We're learning that German precision and American efficiency aren't opposites. They're complementary. The Americans won with scale. We can win the peace by combining our engineering excellence with their production philosophy. They're listening now, Schultz said. Too bad it took a war. Maybe that's what war does, Klaus replied. Teaches lessons nobody wants to learn until they have no choice. By 1947, the training program had evolved. German instructors now outnumbered Americans. The curriculum had been adapted, maintaining American principles, but incorporating German engineering refinement. The synthesis of two philosophies. Klaus trained his replacement in March, a young German named Schmidt, too young to have fought smart enough to understand both systems. What's the most important lesson? Schmidt asked. Klaus thought about that question, about a truck found in France, about years of war, about defeat and adaptation and survival. That engineering isn't about making the best possible thing, Klaus said finally. It's about making the right thing for the situation. Sometimes that's precision. Sometimes it's simplicity. Sometimes it's the wisdom to know which one you need. And now Germany needs both. Precision to maintain quality. Simplicity to achieve scale. The Americans taught us scale through defeat. We teach ourselves precision through tradition. Together, those create something new. Schmidt wrote that down. Klaus smiled. The lesson would continue without him. He left the program in June 1947, moved back to Stuttgart, joined the Opel reconstruction effort as a production consultant. His job helped implement American assembly line methods while maintaining German engineering standards. The synthesis of two worlds built on lessons learned in defeat. On August 17, 1947, exactly 3 years after finding that first GMC truck, Klaus stood in the partially rebuilt Opel factory and watched the first post-war truck roll off the assembly line. German-designed, American-influenced, something new. What do you think? Asked the plant manager. Klaus watched the truck undergo inspection, watched workers check torque specifications, test electrical systems, verify quality. American speed, German thoroughness. I think, Klaus said slowly, we finally learned the lesson. Excellence doesn't mean complexity. It means building what works, building it well, and building enough of it. The truck passed inspection, drove out of the factory under its own power, ready for the reconstruction of Germany. Klaus pulled out his old journal, the one he'd carried through the war. Flipped to that first entry from August 1944. Read his own words about American industrial philosophy. Then he wrote one final entry. 3 years ago, I found an enemy's truck and learned why we'd lose. Today, I watched us build our own, incorporating what they taught us. Defeat was our greatest teacher. Survival is our final exam. We passed. He closed the journal, filed it away. The war was over. The lessons remained. And Germany slowly was learning to build again. The factory grew, month by month, year by year. By 1950, Opel was producing 500 trucks monthly. By 1952, that number had doubled. Klaus watched it happen from his desk in the production engineering department, surrounded by blueprints that married German precision with American pragmatism. You're quiet today, said Werner, his assistant. Young man, born in 1930. Too young for the war, old enough to remember the hunger afterward. Thinking about numbers, Klaus replied. In 1944, this factory could barely produce 20 trucks per month. Now we build 1,000. What changed? Everything changed. No, we changed. We stopped building each truck like a masterpiece and started building them like products. American lesson, German execution. Werner looked at the assembly line visible through the office window. My father says we lost our soul. That German craftsmanship died in the war. Your father is wrong. Klaus stood, walked to the window. We didn't lose our soul. We found a bigger one. Watch. On the line below, workers assembled a truck in stages. Each station had specific tasks, specific tools, specific time allocations. American efficiency. But at quality control, 3 inspectors checked every vehicle with German thoroughness, measured tolerances, tested systems, rejected anything substandard. See American speed, German standards. That's not loss of soul, that's evolution. The door opened. Schultz entered carrying coffee and a newspaper. You need to read this, Schultz said, handing Klaus the paper. Page 7. Klaus read. An article about the Wirtschaftswunder, Germany's economic miracle. It quoted economists attributing rapid recovery to Marshall Plan aid and German work ethic. But buried in the text, one line stood out. Former Wehrmacht mechanics trained in American methods now teach production efficiency across German industry. They're writing about us, Schultz said, without naming us. Good. The work matters. The credit doesn't. Still, we helped build this. You especially. The training program, the production methods, this factory. Klaus folded the newspaper. We helped Germany learn from defeat, that's all. Millions of others did more. But he kept the article anyway, filed it with his war journal, evidence that lessons learned in retreat had become foundation stones for reconstruction. In 1953, the company asked Klaus to travel to Detroit. General Motors wanted to discuss licensing agreements and technical exchanges. Opel had been a GM subsidiary before the war, and now with Germany rebuilding, the Americans wanted to reconnect. Klaus flew for the first time. Lufthansa flight Frankfurt to New York, then connecting to Detroit. The irony wasn't lost on him. German civilian aviation restored by the same nation that had bombed it to rubble. Detroit shocked him. The scale. The factories that stretched for kilometers. The parking lots filled with workers' cars. Not luxury vehicles, but affordable transportation. Mass production had created mass prosperity. His GM liaison was a man named Robert Carson. 50s. Engineering background. He picked Klaus up from the hotel in a new Chevrolet truck. Comfortable? Carson asked. Very. This is smooth. Should be. Built it myself. Well, my team did. I oversee light truck production. They drove to the GM Technical Center in Warren. The facility was enormous. Klaus tried not to stare. You seem surprised, Carson said. I knew American industry was large. I didn't understand the scale until now. This is just one center. We have 6 more. Ford has 5. Chrysler has 3. And that's just automotive. Wait till you see the steel mills. Carson showed Klaus through the engineering departments, design studios with dozens of engineers, testing facilities that could simulate years of wear in weeks, computer rooms, IBM machines calculating stress loads and production schedules. How many engineers work here? Klaus asked. This center about 4,000, company-wide maybe 20,000. Klaus thought about Opel's engineering staff of 200. The numbers made him dizzy. Over lunch in the executive dining room, Carson asked questions. You were Wehrmacht correct mechanic? Yes. 276th Infantry Division. And you captured our vehicles. Used them. We did. By 1944, we were running more American trucks than German ones. Not by choice, by necessity. Carson leaned forward. Tell me about that. I want to understand how our vehicles performed under hostile conditions. Klaus spent an hour describing the GMC trucks, the simplicity, the reliability, the maintenance philosophy. Carson listened intently, taking notes. Everything you're describing, Carson said finally, was intentional. We designed those trucks for exactly the conditions you describe. Unskilled operators, minimal maintenance, battlefield abuse. The goal was keeping units mobile regardless of skill level. You succeeded, perhaps too well. Meaning your trucks helped defeat us, but they also taught us. After the war, we rebuilt German industry using American production principles. Your enemies became your students. Carson smiled. That's not defeat. That's investment. A prosperous Germany is a stable Germany. A stable Germany doesn't start another war. We'd rather sell you trucks than fight you with them. They spent 3 more days touring facilities. Klaus met engineers who'd designed the GMC trucks, met production managers who'd scaled manufacturing to wartime levels, met logistics officers who'd planned the supply chains that fed armies across 2 oceans. Question, Klaus said on his last day. During the war, did you know how effective your logistics were? Did you know you were winning through abundance? Some of us did. Most didn't think about it. We just built trucks. Carson paused. Did you know you were losing? Yes. From August 1944, I knew. The mathematics were inescapable. But you kept fighting. What else could we do? Surrender individually. Desert. We were trapped in a machine that kept running even when the outcome was decided. Carson drove Klaus to the airport. They shook hands at departure. You should be proud, Carson said. You helped rebuild Germany. That takes more courage than fighting. Or less. Fighting is simpler than adapting. Klaus flew home, spent the flight thinking about scale and production and the strange paths of history that turned enemies into teachers and defeat into education. Back in Stuttgart, he wrote a report for Opel Management. Technical observations from Detroit. Production methods worth adopting. Design philosophies worth studying. The report was 60 pages. Management read it carefully. 2 months later, they promoted Klaus to Director of Production Engineering. His job modernized the entire Opel manufacturing system using lessons from Detroit and experience from Reconstruction. He accepted. The work was immense. He was 51 years old and felt 70. But the challenge excited him. Schultz became his deputy. Together, they redesigned the assembly process, reduced production time by 30%, increased quality scores by 40%, lowered costs by 25%. German precision at American scale. By 1956, Opel was producing 1,500 trucks monthly, exporting to France, Belgium, Netherlands. The vehicles combined German engineering reliability with American production efficiency, a synthesis born from defeat. In May 1957, Klaus received an invitation. The German Automotive Association wanted to honor Reconstruction-era engineers. He was on the list. You should go, his wife said. They'd married in 1948, a widow he'd met through church. She understood his silences and nightmares. I don't need recognition. It's not about need. It's about acknowledging what was built from ruins. He attended. The ceremony was in Frankfurt. 30 engineers received awards. Klaus's citation read, "For contributions to post-war automotive production methodology and worker training programs." During the reception, an older man approached. Distinguished. White hair. Familiar face. Müller, Klaus Müller. Klaus studied him. Recognition clicked. Captain Weber. Hauptmann retired. Weber smiled. You remember. You read my report. 1944, Zossen. I did. And I wrote you a letter after the war. Did you receive it? I did. You were in Russian captivity. Weber's smile faded. 3 years. They weren't kind. But I learned what you tried to teach us. That precision loses to abundance. That excellence without scale is obsolete. He paused. I work for Daimler-Benz now. Production consulting. Using lessons learned the hard way. They talked for an hour. About the war. About Reconstruction. About the strange mercy of surviving defeat and learning from it. Sometimes I wonder, Weber said, what would have happened if High Command had listened to your report? If we'd understood in 1944 what we understand now? We'd have lost anyway, Klaus replied. The gap was too large, but maybe we'd have lost faster, saved lives by ending sooner. That's a disturbing thought. True thoughts often are. Klaus continued working through the late 1950s. The factory prospered. Germany prospered. The Wirtschaftswunder was real, driven by hard work, American aid, and lessons learned through catastrophic defeat. In 1960, Opel celebrated producing its 1 millionth post-war vehicle. A ceremony, speeches, the press. The plant manager asked Klaus to speak. He stood before workers and executives and said something simple. In 1944, I found an American truck abandoned in France. It taught me that Germany had lost the war, not because American soldiers were better, but because American logistics were unstoppable. Today, we produce vehicles using lessons from that truck. We combine German quality with American efficiency. We build what works, build it well, and build enough of it. That's the legacy of defeat turned into wisdom. The applause was polite but confused. Most workers were too young to understand the reference. That was fine. They didn't need to understand history to build the future. Klaus retired in 1965 at age 62. His replacement was Werner, the young assistant who'd asked about German soul years earlier, now a skilled production engineer who understood both systems. What will you do? Werner asked on Klaus's last day. Rest, travel, spend time with my wife, maybe write something about what we learned. You should. The lessons matter. Klaus did write. Not a memoir exactly. More like an extended essay about industrial philosophy and the education of defeat. He finished it in 1967, 300 pages, titled simply, Lessons in Steel: How American Trucks Taught German Engineers. He sent copies to former colleagues, to universities, to automotive companies. Most responses were polite acknowledgement. A few were deeply engaged. One letter came from an American professor, Dr. Mitchell from MIT. Your manuscript is remarkable, Mitchell wrote. It articulates principles that American engineers understood instinctively but never formalized. The relationship between simplicity and scale, between quality and abundance, between precision and pragmatism. I'd like to use sections in my production engineering course, with your permission. Klaus granted it. His experiences turned into education. The cycle continuing. In 1974, Klaus visited the Frankfurt Motor Show with Schultz. Old men now walking slowly, taking breaks. Look at these machines, Schultz said, gesturing at the displays. German engineering at its finest. Mercedes, BMW, Porsche. The precision we thought we'd lost. We didn't lose it, Klaus replied. We refined it, added efficiency to excellence. These vehicles are better than anything we built before the war because they combine both philosophies. They stopped at the Opel display. A new truck model, sophisticated, reliable, affordable. We helped build that, Schultz said quietly. Not directly. But the methods we taught, the systems we created, they're in there. Yes, our legacy isn't the machines. It's the thinking behind them. Klaus lived to see Germany become an automotive powerhouse, lived to see Mercedes and BMW become symbols of excellence worldwide, lived to see the synthesis he'd helped create mature into something remarkable. He died in 1982 at age 79. Heart attack, quick and clean. His wife found him in his study, his old war journal open on the desk, reading his own words from 1944. At the funeral, Werner spoke. Now a senior executive at Opel. Klaus Müller taught me that defeat can be a teacher if you're brave enough to learn. He showed me that adaptation isn't weakness, it's wisdom. He lived the truth that sometimes the enemy who defeats you becomes the teacher who saves you. Schultz attended, old and frail but present. We found a truck in France, Schultz told the gathered mourners. Just a truck. But Klaus saw what it meant, saw the philosophy behind it, saw the future in its simplicity, and he spent his life teaching others to see the same thing. The ceremony ended. People dispersed. But Schultz remained at the grave, standing in the rain. Krebs joined him, older, still leaning on a cane. "Strange thing," Krebs said. "We lost a war but helped win the peace. We were defeated but taught others how to succeed. We captured enemy trucks and learned enemy wisdom." "Klaus would say that's not strange at all," Schultz replied. "He'd say that's how learning works. Defeat strips away pride, makes room for truth." They stood in silence, two old mechanics remembering a third, remembering a war, remembering lessons learned in steel and oil and the mathematics of abundance. "Do you think it mattered?" Krebs asked. "What we did, the training programs, the production methods, did it change anything?" Schultz thought about that, about factories rebuilt, about workers trained, about vehicles rolling off assembly lines in numbers that would have seemed impossible in 1945. "Drive through Germany," Schultz said finally. "Look at the trucks on the roads, the factories producing them, the prosperity built on logistics and production. Yes, it mattered." They left the cemetery. Behind them, rain fell on Klaus Müller's grave. The stone was simple: name, dates, and beneath that, a single line: "He learned from enemies and taught friends." Years later, in 1995, a researcher named Dr. Sarah Klein discovered Klaus's manuscript in the MIT Engineering Library. She was writing her dissertation on post-war industrial reconstruction. Klaus's work became a primary source. Her dissertation examined how defeated nations rebuilt, how Japan and Germany both learned from victors, how American production methods spread globally through the education of former enemies. She interviewed Schultz, now 92, and living in a retirement home. "Did Müller know how influential his work would become?" she asked. "No. He just wanted people to understand, to learn from mistakes, to see that defeat isn't the end, it's sometimes the beginning of wisdom." Do you think the lesson still applies today, in the modern world? Schultz looked out the window at the parking lot. Rows of cars, German, American, Japanese, Korean, all built using production philosophies refined through the hard education of war. "The lesson always applies," he said. "Pride makes you rigid. Defeat makes you flexible. Flexibility lets you learn. Learning lets you survive." That's true in 1944 and true now. Dr. Klein published her dissertation in 1997. It won awards, generated discussion. Klaus Müller's name appeared in academic papers and industry journals. The mechanic who'd learned from enemies became a case study in adaptive thinking. In 2004, on the 60th anniversary of the Normandy invasion, a German automotive museum in Stuttgart opened an exhibit, Logistics and Learning: How American Vehicles Changed German Industry. The centerpiece was a restored 1944 GMC CCKW truck. Beside it, an Opel Blitz from the same era. The plaques told their stories. The GMC simple, reliable, mass-produced. The Opel sophisticated, efficient, limited production. And between them, displayed in a glass case, Klaus Müller's war journal. Open to the page dated August 17, 1944. His handwritten words visible to visitors. "We have encountered the enemy's greatest weapon, and it is not a tank or aircraft. It is a design philosophy that assumes infinite scale." Thousands of visitors read those words. Students, engineers, veterans, historians, each understanding it differently, each taking something away. The exhibit remained open for 5 years. When it closed, the journal was archived, but copies of that page were made, distributed. Klaus's words continued teaching long after his death. In 2014, 70 years after that August day in France, an American engineer named David Thompson visited the museum. His grandfather had driven GMC trucks in the war, had been at Normandy at the Bulge at the Rhine crossing. Thompson read Klaus's journal entry, stood there for 20 minutes reading and rereading. Finally, he wrote in the visitor book, "My grandfather drove these trucks. Never knew they taught our enemies. Never knew defeat could be education. Thank you for preserving this story." The museum guide saw him writing. Approached. "Did your grandfather survive the war?" she asked. "Yes, came home. Worked for GM in Detroit. Helped design the next generation of trucks. Died in 1989. Perhaps he met Klaus Müller. Müller visited Detroit in 1953, toured GM facilities, met with truck engineers." Thompson stared. "Is there a record of who he met?" They checked archives, found a visitor log. May 15, 1953. Klaus Müller, guest of Robert Carson Light Truck Division. Tour participants: Carson Müller and 8 GM engineers. One name on that list, James Thompson, Sergeant U.S. Army retired, now employed as production engineer, GM Truck Division. "That's him," David said quietly. "That's my grandfather." The guide smiled. "Then your grandfather and Klaus Müller met, former enemies, teaching each other, building the future together." David Thompson left the museum with a copy of that visitor log, showed it to his family. His son asked questions. David explained what he'd learned. "So great-grandpa's enemy became his colleague?" "Yes." "Is that weird?" "No. That's how we move forward. We learn from each other, even especially from those who defeat us." The story continues. Passed down. Generation to generation. A GMC truck found in France. Lessons learned in defeat. Wisdom built from ruins. The cycle of teaching and learning that never truly ends. In workshops and classrooms, in factories and universities, the principles Klaus Müller helped spread continue. Simplicity enables scale. Abundance defeats precision without scale. Adaptation matters more than pride. Learning from defeat is stronger than celebrating victory. These truths, written in steel and oil and the hard experience of war, became foundation stones for peace. The trucks that helped defeat Germany also helped rebuild it. The enemies who won became the teachers who lifted the defeated. And somewhere in the machinery of history, in the assembly lines and production systems and training programs, Klaus Müller's lesson echoes: still, excellence isn't complexity. Excellence is building what works, building it well, and building enough of it to matter. Germany learned that lesson, built prosperity on it, became an industrial power again, not by rejecting defeat, but by learning from it. The GMC truck sat in France in August 1944, abandoned and forgotten. But its lesson traveled far. Crossed borders, survived peace. Became the teacher that war never intended but peace desperately needed. They built it for conquest. It taught reconciliation. They designed it for war. It became a textbook for peace. One truck, one mechanic, one lesson, and from that, a nation rebuilt. If you believe some truths are worth preserving, share this story. Write the names you remember in the comments. Keep teaching. Keep learning. Keep understanding that sometimes defeat is the beginning of wisdom, and the enemy who beats you might be the teacher you needed all along.